I came home 2 days early because the retreat ended with a surprise optional dinner that somehow became mandatory the second my boss started counting heads, and I was already done playing resort hostage. So when my key slid into the lock and I heard laughter from my own bedroom, I didn't think. I just went cold. And I'm telling you right now, the worst sound in the world is a stranger getting comfortable in your house. And yes, I'm getting to what I saw in my bed. But first you need to understand how we got there. Because my wife, Marissa, had been treating this corporate retreat like I'd personally booked a romance getaway with her enemies. It started a week before I left, when HR sent the email with the smug subject line, Team Reset Lakeside Resort, and a bullet point list that might as well have said, no spouses, no plus ones, no exceptions, bring your badge, bring your laptop, bring your willingness to pretend you're thrilled to do trust, falls with people who forward emails in all caps. I read it out loud at the kitchen island while Marissa chopped strawberries like she was auditioning for a cooking show. Her knife stopped mid-slice. She looked up and she said, "So you're going on vacation without me?" Like I'd confessed to a second family, I laughed because it was so absurd. I said, "It's not a vacation, it's a corporate retreat. They literally call it a reset so they can justify making us sit in circles and say what animal represents our work style." She didn't laugh. She wiped her hands on a towel and said, "They can't tell you I can't come." I pointed at the email. "They can. They did. It's employees only. I didn't make the rules." And she hit me with that quiet tone that's never actually quiet. Rules change when people want them to. Then she asked the question that always makes my stomach tighten. "Who's going?" I told her. "Everyone from my department. Ethan, Priya, the new VP. That guy from finance who looks like he eats spreadsheets." She nodded like she was taking notes for a trial. Then she said, "And your work wife," which was her favorite nickname for my coworker, Donna, a 40-year-old mother of two who once lent me a phone charger and apparently became my soulmate in Marissa's imagination. I sighed. "Dana will be there." "Yes, because she works there. Like me." Marissa smiled without warmth and said, "Funny how work always needs you overnight." I reminded her. It was 2 days. I reminded her my location would be on. I reminded her the resort schedule was basically sunrise coffee and corporate bonding until your personality evaporated. She still acted like I was abandoning her on a deserted island with nothing but a ring light and her suspicions. And to be fair, Marissa was good at suspicion. She could sniff out a changed tone in my voice the way bloodhounds find hidden bones. Except she didn't always use that talent for good. She used it like a weapon. Like if she accused first, she couldn't be accused later. The night before I left, she got sweet. Too sweet. She made my favorite pasta. She rubbed my shoulders. She called me babe, in that bright way she used when she wanted something. And when I said, "Thank you for being cool about this," she held my face and said, "I'm cool. I just don't like surprises." Then she added, "Don't make me look stupid." And I laughed again. Because what does that even mean? But her eyes didn't laugh back. They tracked me, like she was memorizing my features for a missing person poster. The morning of the drive, she stood by the front door with my suitcase and asked, "So no spouses, no exceptions, right?" I nodded. I kissed her forehead, and she kissed me back like she was stamping me with a warning label. "Call me when you get there," she said. "Video call," I agreed. Because I didn't think agreeing would cost me anything. I thought the cost was 2 days of awkward icebreakers and lukewarm chicken. I thought the cost was my time, my patience, maybe my dignity if they made me do karaoke. I didn't think the cost would be my marriage. The resort was one of those places designed to make you forget what day it is. Fake lodge vibe, pine-scented lobby, fireplace that's always lit even when it's 70 degrees outside. The kind of place where the staff says things like, "Welcome back," even if they've never seen you in their lives. We checked in as a herd, badges out, tote bags in hand, and right away my phone started buzzing. "Marissa, send a pic." So I did. Selfie with the lobby behind me, then, "Who are you with?" So I panned the camera like a weather report. Ethan doing a dramatic bow, Priya rolling her eyes, Dana holding up her room key like a trophy, and I could feel it. That tiny shift in my gut. Because I knew seeing Dana would send Marissa into orbit. But I wasn't going to crop reality for anyone. Marissa replied with a single thumbs up, which in our marriage translated to, I am collecting evidence. The first day was meetings and forced fun. We did a values hike, where the VP asked us to share our biggest fear while we walked past a lake so calm it looked fake. My biggest fear, I almost said, going home to unnecessary drama, but I kept it professional and said, complacency, because I'm employed and I enjoy eating. That night, Marissa insisted on a video call. I sat on my balcony with the resort blanket over my knees, and she answered already dressed up, makeup done, hair curled, like she was about to go somewhere. Where are you going? I asked. Trying to sound casual, she laughed. Now you're the suspicious one, I said. No, I'm the husband watching you wear heels to sit on our couch. She tilted the camera, showed the living room, then quickly tilted it back. Girls' night, she said. You don't want me stuck at home lonely, do you? I told her. Of course not. And I meant it. I wanted her to have fun. I wanted her to trust me. I just didn't know she'd turn trust into a competition. Like whoever broke it first won. The second day, the schedule ran long. My boss pulled me aside after a session and said, we need you on a new account. Big opportunity. And I felt a flicker of pride, until he added, you'll be traveling more. I thought about Marissa's face, about that warning, don't make me look stupid, and I felt my stomach drop, because I could already hear the fights we hadn't had yet. That's why I left early. Not just because of the forced dinner, but because I wanted to get home while the idea of us was still intact in my head. I drove back through dusk, highway lights streaking like cheap fireworks, my phone in the cup holder showing my location like a leash I'd volunteered for. I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd soften the news about more travel, how I'd make her feel chosen. And when I pulled into our driveway, the porch light was off, which was weird. Marissa never left it off. She said it made the house look unloved. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and that's when I heard it. A low male laugh, and Marissa's voice, bright and close, and my whole body went still. Because no matter how many arguments you survive, you never prepare for the moment your life stops sounding like yours. I walked toward the bedroom like I was approaching a stage where I already knew the ending. And when I reached the doorway, I saw a man's shoes on my side of the bed. I saw a jacket on my chair. My chair, like he'd been here long enough to claim furniture. And I saw Marissa's hand on a stranger's shoulder, like it belonged there. And in that second, the corporate retreat, the rules, the video calls, the jokes about work wives, all of it snapped into one ugly, simple truth. And I didn't scream. I didn't lunge. I didn't beg for an explanation. I just stood there, blinking like my brain was trying to reject the image. Because shock is polite that way. It tries to protect you. And the man turned his head, looked at me like I'd interrupted him in a hotel room. And Marissa's face, my wife's face, didn't show guilt first. It showed irritation, like I'd ruined her timing, and that, more than anything, told me exactly who she'd been while I was busy trying to be reasonable. I felt my dignity click into place like a seatbelt. And I said, very calmly, I'm going to grab a bag. And then I walked away. Because whatever was about to happen next, I refused to do it on my knees in my own house. Not for her. Not for anyone. And I didn't know it yet. But the twist was, this wasn't the first time she'd rehearsed this scene. It was just the first time I showed up for the performance. I didn't slam anything. I didn't throw a single dramatic line over my shoulder. I just walked to the hall closet like I lived alone, and this was a Tuesday chore. My hands were steady, which felt illegal, like my body was betraying my feelings. Behind me, I heard the mattress shift, then a quick whisper, then Marissa's footsteps, soft at first, then faster. The way someone hurries when they realize the story they planned is slipping out of their control. Wait, she said, and I kept moving. Not because I was trying to punish her, But because I knew if I stopped and looked at her face for too long, I'd start bargaining with a memory instead of dealing with the person standing in front of me, I pulled my duffel from the top shelf, the same one I used for gym clothes. The irony was almost cute. Marissa grabbed my arm, her nails pressing just enough to make a point. "You can't just leave," she said, like I was the one breaking vows on a weeknight. I turned my head. Not fully, just enough to show her I'd heard. "I can," I said. "Watch me." And that was the first time her eyes flashed. Not guilt, not shame. Something like panic mixed with anger. "It's not what you think," she said. And I almost laughed. Because if it wasn't what I thought. Then I had apparently discovered a new species of man who sleeps fully dressed in my bed for conservation purposes. I kept stuffing clothes into the bag. Clean shirts, jeans, socks. I was moving fast and quiet. Like a professional. Like I'd trained for this. And maybe I had. Maybe I'd been training every time she accused me of things I didn't do. Every time she needed to be the victim before I could even be confused, from the bedroom doorway. The guy spoke, and his voice hit me like a commercial. Too casual, too confident. "Hey man, I didn't know you were coming back tonight," he said, as if I'd failed to update my arrival time in the group chat for my own marriage. I looked at him then. Really looked. He wasn't some random hookup stumble. He had that neat hair and gym-cut jaw of someone who tries to look trustworthy on purpose. Early 30s, nice watch, clean sneakers placed with care. My sneakers were in a pile by the door. His were lined up like a display. I said, "Yeah, funny, neither did I." And Marissa snapped, "Don't talk to him." Like I was about to corrupt her guest experience, she pulled herself up, shoulders back, that polished posture she used at parties when she wanted people to think we were fine. "This is Nolan," she said, as if introductions could sanitize anything. Nolan lifted his hand in a half wave. I didn't take it. I nodded once, then zipped my duffel. The zipper sounded louder than it should have. The house suddenly felt too small, and the air smelled like Marissa's perfume, heavy sweet, and something else. A cologne that didn't belong to me. And the longer I stood there, the more I realized how staged it all was. Not messy, not frantic. Staged, the throw pillows were arranged. The bedside lamp was on. The sheets were pulled up like they'd made the bed after climbing in. Which meant they had time. Which meant they weren't afraid of being caught. Which meant, and this part landed like a brick. She didn't actually believe I could come home early, because she believed she controlled the schedule. She always did. She tracked my location. She demanded calls. She asked for photos, not to trust me. But to manage the space around her own choices, I picked up my keys from the bowl by the door. The same ceramic bowl Marissa insisted we buy because it looked intentional. She stepped in front of me, blocking the hallway. "We need to talk," she said. "Like adults." I tilted my head. Adults don't need to explain why there's a man in their bed. Her face hardened. And there it was, the pivot, the switch from panic to blame. "You left me," she said. "You chose work over me. You went on a resort trip and expected me to just smile and wave." I stared at her. Because in her mind, a corporate retreat had become a betrayal big enough to justify anything. I said, "I went where my job told me to go for 2 days," she shot back. 2 days is plenty of time to forget you have a wife." Nolan cleared his throat like he was about to mediate. "Look, I can go," he said. And Marissa immediately said, "No. Too fast, too sharp, like he was part of the furniture too. Like he belonged in the scene." Then she looked at me and tried a softer voice. "I was lonely," she said. "You don't get it. You've been distant. You come home tired. You talk about spreadsheets. You stopped seeing me." And if she'd said that before I opened that bedroom door, I might have listened. I might have felt guilty. I might have tried harder. But now it sounded like a script she'd practiced in front of the mirror. I glanced at the nightstand and saw my watch. Not on my wrist, on the nightstand, face down. And I remembered taking it off before the retreat because it pinched during the hike. I'd left it here. I hadn't touched it since. So why was it on her side of the bed? The detail was small, but it told me something huge. She'd been in my space with him long enough to move my things, to erase me, to rearrange the evidence of my life like she was redecorating. I asked quietly, "How long?" Marissa blinked. "What?" I nodded toward Nolan. "How long has he been here?" She lifted her chin. "Why does it matter? You're leaving anyway." That sentence was the second reveal. Not the affair, the confidence. She'd already decided I was the kind of man who would swallow anything or storm out and crawl back. She'd decided my dignity was a bluff, and I felt something settle inside me, not rage, clarity. I stepped to the side, because I wasn't going to wrestle for hallway access in my own home. "Move," I said, calm, and she actually laughed, a short, mean sound. "Or what?" she asked, and for a split second I saw the version of our marriage she'd been living in, the one where she provokes until I explode, then points at the explosion like proof I'm the problem. I didn't give her that. I looked at Nolan instead. "Tell her I came home early," I said. "Tell her I didn't abandon her. I showed up." Nolan's smile faltered, and Marissa's eyes narrowed, because she knew what I was doing. I was refusing to fight her story. I was naming reality. She stepped aside finally, still blocking half the space with her attitude. "Fine," she said. "Go be dramatic." I walked out the front door, and the cold night air hit my face like a reset button. But I didn't make it to my car before my phone buzzed. A notification, not from Marissa, from my bank app. And when I looked down, I saw a charge pending, Lakeside Resort gift shop. And I hadn't been near the gift shop, which meant someone had my card. And the only person who knew where I kept my backup wallet was inside my house, smiling like I was the villain in her story. I sat in my car with the engine off, staring at that notification like it was a dare. Lakeside Resort gift shop. $187.42. And the funniest part, the resort was 2 hours behind me, which meant this wasn't some delayed tap. It was fresh, recent, intentional. I scrolled. Another pending charge. Lakeside Resort Spa. $320,000. And I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain needed something to do besides shatter. So while Marissa was inside my house auditioning for wife who was totally wronged, she'd also managed to turn my corporate retreat into her personal shopping trip. I checked my wallet, my main card was there, but the backup card I kept in the little zipper pocket was gone. The one Marissa teased me about. "Why do you stash money like you're in the mob?" Yeah, that one. My hands finally started shaking, not wild, just a steady tremor like my body was trying to catch up to the situation. I called the bank, put it on speaker, and listened to cheerful hold music that sounded like it was composed by someone who'd never been betrayed a day in their life. While I waited, I looked up at our dark porch, and I realized something that made my stomach flip. She didn't just cheat, she coordinated, because to use that card she had to know my schedule, my location, my retreat details, and she had to be confident I wouldn't pop up early like she had inside information. When the bank rep answered, I kept my voice calm. "Hi, I need to freeze a card. Fraudulent charges." The rep asked me to confirm identity stuff. I did. Then I said, "Those charges at Lakeside Resort aren't mine." And she paused. "Sir, the transactions were made with the physical card." I felt my jaw tighten. Yes, that's the problem. I froze it, filed the report, and the rep asked if I wanted to change my online banking password too. I said yes immediately, because suddenly my marriage felt like a security breach. When I hung up, I had a choice: drive away and never look back, or walk back in and demand answers like it was a courtroom drama. And I'm going to be honest. My pride wanted the clean exit. The movie version where I disappear into the night with my dignity and a cool soundtrack. But my life isn't a movie. My life has shared accounts. A mortgage, a dog, and a wife who just proved she sees boundaries as suggestions. So I went back inside. Not stomping, not raging, just controlled, like I was returning a defective product. Marissa was in the kitchen now, robe tied tight, hair a little messy, like she tried to look both innocent and irresistible and landed on annoyed. Nolan was nowhere in sight, which meant he was either hiding or she'd already sent him out the back like a pizza delivery. "Oh my God, you're still here," she said, and I held up my phone, screen bright. "Did you use my card at my resort?" Her eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me, and for the first time she looked caught. Not guilty, caught. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, too quick, and I nodded slowly. "Cool. Then you won't mind me calling the resort and asking for the name on the spa appointment." Her nostrils flared, and she did that thing where she tries to reverse the spotlight. "Are you seriously tracking my spending right now?" I said. "No, Marissa. My bank is tracking my spending because someone stole my backup card, and it's either you or the tooth fairy." She opened her mouth, closed it, then leaned on the counter like she was exhausted by my audacity. "I needed a break," she said. "You were off relaxing. I figured I deserved something too." I stared at her. I was working. She rolled her eyes. At a resort. And there it was again. The way she kept calling it a vacation, like repeating it could rewrite the email, rewrite reality, rewrite the fact that she had a man in our bed. I said, "Where's Nolan?" She hesitated, just a beat. "He left," I asked. "Did he drive your car?" And her face betrayed her, a tiny flicker, because my keys were in my pocket. So if Nolan left, he left with something else. Something she gave him, something she didn't want me thinking about. I walked past her to the entryway, glanced at the key bowl, and my spare house key, the one we kept for emergencies, was gone. I turned back. "You gave him a key." Marissa crossed her arms. "Don't be dramatic," I said. "You gave a stranger access to my home," she snapped. "He's not a stranger." And the silence after that sentence was loud, because it answered the question she refused to answer before. "How long?" I took a breath. Then another. "I'm leaving tonight," I said. "But here's what's going to happen next. You're going to text me the truth. How long? Who knows? What accounts you touched. And you're going to do it before midnight. Because after midnight, I'm changing every password and calling a lawyer." She laughed, sharp. "You think you can threaten me?" I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her like she was a puzzle I'd finally stopped trying to solve. "It's not a threat. It's a timeline." And as I turned toward the door, my phone buzzed again. Not a bank alert this time. A message from an unknown number, a photo, and when it loaded, my stomach dropped. It was me at the resort balcony, taken from an angle I didn't recognize, and underneath it, one line, "Thought you should know what your wife's been planning." I stared at the photo until my eyes burned, because it wasn't a screenshot from my own phone. It was taken from outside, like someone had been watching me. The caption felt like ice. "Thought you should know what your wife's been planning." I looked up at Marissa and she was suddenly too still, too quiet, like she knew exactly what I'd received. "Who is this number?" I asked. She blinked slow. "I don't know." But her voice cracked on the last word. I walked toward her, not fast, just direct, and held the screen out. "Explain why someone can photograph me on a work balcony and text me like we're friends." She snatched the phone, scanned it, and her face flashed anger first. Not fear, anger. Then she tossed it back like it burned. "This is insane," she said. "You're being paranoid." I nodded once. "No, Marissa. Paranoid is thinking my coworker is my secret lover because she owns a charger. This is evidence." Her jaw tightened. "So what? You think I hired a spy?" I said. "I think you told Nolan where I was. I think you handed him my spare key. I think you used my card at the resort, and now someone is playing games with my life." She threw her hands up. "I was lonely, okay?" she said. "I told him you'd be gone. I didn't tell him to stalk you." I exhaled, steady. "So Nolan took that photo." She hesitated, then shrugged, and that shrug was a confession in cheap packaging. My phone buzzed again. Same number, another message. Check the trunk of her car. I looked at Marissa, then at the hallway where her keys hung on the hook. My pulse didn't race. It slowed, because my brain had entered that eerie calm where everything becomes procedural. Marissa followed my gaze. "Don't you dare," she said, stepping in front of the hallway. And that was all I needed. Because innocent people don't guard car trunks like state secrets. I picked up my duffel, opened the front door, and said, "Move, or I'm calling the police to report a stolen key and stolen card." Her face drained. She stepped aside, still glaring, but quieter now. I walked to her car in the driveway, popped the trunk with the button on her fob that was still on the hook because she'd been too frantic to hide it, and inside was a small overnight bag, men's, and a folder with my name written on it in Marissa's handwriting, like she'd labeled my downfall. I lifted the folder, opened it, and my stomach tightened. Printed screenshots, my work schedule, my bank logins, a list of my passwords, and one line at the bottom, in bold, "If he leaves, take half now." My first instinct was to laugh, because it was so bold it felt fake, like a bad crime show written by someone who's never met a competent adult. But the folder was real, the ink was real, my passwords were real, and suddenly every random argument about money. Every time she asked, "What's your login again?" Every sweet little apology after a fight. It all reassembled into one ugly picture. Marissa came outside, barefoot on the cold concrete, robe flapping like a flag. "Get out of my car!" she snapped, still trying to own something. I held up the folder. "You wrote this!" She lunged for it. I stepped back, calm. "No," I said. "You don't get to grab evidence now." Her eyes went wet, not with sadness, with fury. "You were going to leave me anyway," she hissed, and I nodded. "Not until you gave me a reason. You just handed me a binder." I pulled out my phone, took photos of every page, then slid the folder back into the trunk and shut it, gentle, like closing a file. "Midnight," I reminded her. "Truth, accounts, keys, or lawyers." Then I got in my car and drove off without looking back. I didn't go to a bar. I didn't go to a buddy's couch to cry into pizza. I went to my office parking lot because it was lit, quiet, and it reminded me who I was. Before I became someone's convenient storyline, I sat there and changed every password, email, bank, payroll, utilities, even the streaming service because I refused to fund her comfort while she sabotaged my life. I called HR and told them my personal info might be compromised. Not the drama, just the facts. And I emailed my boss. "Need to discuss travel expectations, urgent." Then I opened my texts. 11:47 p.m., Marissa finally messaged. A long paragraph that started with, "I'm sorry," and somehow ended with, "You pushed me," she admitted. Nolan was an old friend, admitted she'd been planning to secure money if I chose work. She didn't admit love, she admitted strategy. I replied with one line, "Do not access any account again, communicate through email only." Then I blocked her number and saved the folder photos to 3 places like my future depended on it, because it did. By morning, I'd filed a police report for the stolen spare key and card. Not because I thought cuffs were coming, but because paper trails matter when someone treats your life like a board game. I met a lawyer at 10 a.m., signed a retainer at 10:27, and felt my lungs work again for the first time in days. I went home with a locksmith at noon, changed every lock while Marissa watched from the porch. Mascara perfect, smile brittle, like she still thought charm could overwrite facts. She tried one last time. Soft voice. "We can fix this." I looked at her and kept my tone polite. "You didn't break a vase, Marissa. You built a plan." I handed her a printed notice from my attorney. Asked for my ring back. She slid it off fast, angry, then whispered, "You'll regret this." I smiled once. Not mean, just certain. "No, you will." And I left with my dignity, my documents, and a new rule. Love doesn't require surveillance.